Hello, fan editors and fans of fan edits alike. I'm Baliscon for the Fanedit Network. Why are we here? Existentially, why are we here? No, really, but why are we talking about The Exorcist today? It's garnered probably more discourse than any other horror film of all time, but not necessarily to its benefit. I'm young. I am but a wee little lad, and I didn't live through the hype, but The Exorcist was always the scariest film of all time. Big words. Now, everyone's opinion is subjective. You could have had a stronger experience with a different horror film, or maybe think that a film that isn't even horror is scarier. But we humans find great joy in making declarative statements, so if we were to pick one objective best horror movie, scariest horror movie, it's not Jaws. It sure as hell ain't Sleepwalkers. It's The Exorcist. Trying to convince my fellow spry friends of this fact, though, is somewhat difficult. The Exorcist is no modern film, made 50 years ago. Still, even compared to other 70s films, it was still just made differently. The director punched a real priest in the face and put an absolute wallop on Linda Blair and Ellen Burstyn, and it was no secret. Canceling people wasn't invented until recently, I guess. It's not just that, though. The horror in the film is visceral. So visceral that I can't show you anything because YouTube will take this video down straight away. But really, I don't even need to talk about what those scenes are because you likely know what they are just through the osmosis of culture without even having to watch the movie. Cinematically, though, the pacing just works differently. We open in Iraq for what feels like 47 years. We move to Washington, spend some time talking about ponies, and then bam, hospital, priest sick mom, fireball, priest mom's dead, rock'em sock'em science robot machine, spinny head. Wait, what? Hold on a second. The story doesn't hold your hand. The editing just moves. It makes for an engaging watch. As someone who is making a video for a fan editing channel, I feel like the editing here is just impressive and worth noting. In the short time that I've been a part of the fan editing community, what I've learned about editing is that it's best to try to cut right before the audience can anticipate when the scene's going to change, or when the cut will change. That way the movie stays ahead of the audience and it remains more engaging and exciting. The Exorcist takes this style one step further and bypasses loads of exposition, trusting the audience to pick up on the narrative. As long as they're paying attention and not half-watching while scrolling along on the interwebs. But some moments are allowed to linger, enhancing their tension. This is all the credit to not just director William Friedkin, but to author-screenwriter William Peter Blatty and the editors, these guys. One of these moments features a fantastic jump scare in which Friedkin actually fired a shotgun on set to elicit this response from Jason Miller. Everyone harps on jump scares, but when they're timed out right, and when they're offered in a variety of other different kinds of scares, then they can work. Overall, it makes for a full viewing experience. And boy, does this movie bring on the scares. For me, it starts to ramp up when Reagan's in the hospital and some 1970s medical procedure causes blood to fountain from her neck. Can I show that on YouTube? Because it makes my blood just kind of shrink inside of me. And I hate it. From here, though, the viewer is barraged on both visual and audio fronts, with the greatest disfigurement of innocence ever committed to film. The audience is not allowed a moment to rest, and even subsequent slower scenes are just drenched in despair.
I think the point is to make us despair.
I just said that!
Depending on what version of The Exorcist you're watching, though, you might have a different experience, and some of the scares might not work. That's right. Just like Blade Runner and Star Wars before it, there are two versions of The Exorcist. The extended director's cut was released in the year 2000 and was created more as a celebration and expansion of a treasured film instead of a remedy for a botched edit like Blade Runner. Plus, the original theatrical version is available just right alongside this extended director's cut, unlike a certain other franchise. Originally titled The Exorcist, the version you've never seen, this cut reinstates a number of scenes, including the infamous spider walk sequence, along with additional dialogue that fleshes out the character of Detective Kinderman, who is the lead in Exorcist III. It is for this reason alone that I go to the extended director's cut, because Kinderman is just fantastic. The character slaps, whether it's Lee J. Cobb or George C. Scott in the role.
With my brother, it was nerves.
You make a lot of people nervous.
Only sinners.
Everybody!
Is everything all right in here, guys?
We're fine!
However, the Exorcist extended cut also includes some less than subtle CGI inclusions that have aged more poorly in 20 years than anything else that was originally shot in the 70s, other than the, blood fountain machine. These inclusions aren't as egregious as some of the Star Wars edits, but they're distracting. Friedkin always intended to include subliminal flashes in The Exorcist, although Blatty handedly put him down by saying, "There are no subliminal images. If you can see it, it's not subliminal." The most famous instance of this not-so-subliminal subtle flash is in Father Karras' dream, where a ghostly, ghastly face appears for a few frames. In the extended cut, this bit shows up again, but just look at this. Look at how this scene is composed. Why is the demon face so small compared to Ellen Burstyn's? This isn't scary, this is just kind of silly. It's just a little peekaboo. There are a number of flashes like this in the extended cut, and each of them just don't feel like they merit their inclusion. The ugliest change, by far, is the face morph, where Regan turns into a demon before attacking a man. It's unnecessary, and it only serves to disturb the suspension of disbelief that the original cut of the film so perfectly upholds. So how can I stomach these changes while getting that sweet, sweet Lee J. Cobb on the corn Detective Kinderman that I need in my soul and my life? Well, this video is on a fan editing channel, so most of you probably know the answer to that. Before setting out to create an idealized version of The Exorcist myself, I checked the Reddits for any previous cuts and found Glorious, who created the Trilogy of Faith, a vastly impressive fan edit set of The Exorcist, the Ninth Configuration, which was directed and written by author William Peter Blatty, and Exorcist III. Glorious utilized every deleted scene and piece of archival footage that he could in order to really reach the purest form of Blatty's vision, which I find commendable. That didn't stop me from trying to make my own edit, though. What I set out to do is pretty simple. Replace all of the scenes from the Exorcist extended cut with all of the added subliminals and just swap them out with their theatrical counterparts. For example, here's that same scene where Regan's face morphed, only without the morphing of her face.
Why you?
To me, it's just more frightening to have this little child attack a full man, just out of the blue, rather than her transforming into some, Gollum Binks monstrosity. And so, with a refined, reconsecrated cut of The Exorcist, I could sit and rest easy, right? Not with OCD. I edited the rest of the series. Now, I won't go into the full nitty-gritties with each of them. Exorcist II is laughably bad, and I did what I could to reduce some of the uncomfortable massaging and tap dancing. The Ninth Configuration, which I learned about from Glorious's edit in the first place, is fantastic, but you can definitely tell it's directed by a writer. There is so much time devoted to exploring characters that have very little impact on the core plot, especially this weirdo and his canine theater company, but hey, he looks kind of familiar. I also edited Dominion, the prequel to The Exorcist. One of them, at least. I didn't touch the beginning. We're not going to get into the Exorcist prequels today. If anyone cares enough to learn about that, don't. Let's pause on Exorcist III for a bit, though. This movie isn't necessarily better than The Exorcist. It's an entirely different kind of story, more like a detective cop thriller with a side of demonic possession, but it is one hell of a film that the studios forced Blatty to insert an exorcism in, because it's the Exorcist series. We can't have nice things. This wouldn't have been a problem if the film was released with the title Legion, like the book that Blatty wrote, but Hollywood is full of morons who think that the country is populated by morons. Mill Creek didn't trust that audiences would see the film without the word exorcist in the title and thought, oh gee, we should probably put an exorcism in this movie. And it just doesn't vibe with the tone of the film. It's really gory and kind of quippy. It feels more like a Hellraiser scene than something out of The Exorcist. But you know what? If you cut all of the priest scenes from the film, you would never notice the difference. Glorious circumvented this by including the film's original work print footage, but I do have a soft spot for the theatrical cut scenes, including Jason Miller. Hey, wait a minute. Father Karras is the Highlander.
There can be only one.
As a result, without the tacked-on exorcism, this film can remain as Legion. with a tighter runtime and a more emotionally resonant ending between the narrative's two core characters. So I make this video for two reasons. A, I like attention. 2, it's Halloween. And 3, I want to encourage you that if you have a movie that you think could be the scariest film of all time if it just wasn't held back by some elements, or if there's a movie that you felt like could work but there's just an added scene or some change of music, that could improve the film experience for you, by all means, it is free to go and do this by using DaVinci Resolve. It's a user-friendly program, and it's free, if I haven't mentioned that, and they should pay me for mentioning them in this video. I even encourage you to revisit the Exorcist series for yourself. Would the film work better with more modern editing and a different soundtrack? Do you have different ideas for how to salvage the mess that is Exorcist II? Darksiders adapted my edit of the original film, upscaled it, and meticulously transferred the film to just the best contrast black and white quality that you could find. I highly recommend that as well if you want to experience the film in a different light. That kind of collaboration is one of my favorite aspects of this community, so I leave you all with a question. To finish my reconsecrated cuts, should I end this series with a fan edit of Exorcist Believer or the 2016 Exorcist series? Both have their flaws. Both conclude the story of the McNeils to some degree. So, which do you think would work as a better conclusion to the Exorcist series, and which would you rather see? I've been Baliscon for the Fanedit Network. Thank you so much for your time, and come back for a look at cinema through a different lens. Waha!